458-TALK is the number. We go back to the next phone call. Good morning. Who's this? Are you there? That might be you. Depends on who's calling.
Chris?
Chris, what's on your mind?
Well, I heard something today or yesterday that I can hardly believe. The federal government is, I don't know if it's true, the federal government is trying to get people, you know how you have a family farm and you ask your teenage son to go move some hay and you're on your property?
I would never ask my teenage son to work. No, go ahead.
They're trying to make it a law that for you to drive any kind of equipment on a family farm, it's not even on the road, whatever, not even on a man-made, city or county road, you have to have a driver's license.
You have to actually have a CDL. If it's oh
my God.
Farmers have always been exempt. A farm vehicle, I used to have that exemption when I lived in Idaho long ago. If you're driving a farm vehicle, you didn't have to have a commercial driver's license because you were farming. You were doing it for your own self. And I believe what you're saying is right. You have to have a driver's license even if you're on your own property. But they're also wanting to get rid of the farmer's exemption to put them under
so they're just
commercial
asking
driver's
for
license.
more money.
Oh, absolutely. They want to shut. Well, who wants a bunch of little farmers out there? They all need to be corporate farmers.
Oh, there you go.
For the state.
Yeah.
It's the only way, really, that they're going to be able to get any money out of us because there are so many people right now that are opting out of the monetary system. They're doing things like hiring people without actually paying them a salary. They're paying them in things like, room and board.
Well, it's a lot harder also to create an idiot in the public school if you got a kid working with his family on a farm and he's learning how to fend for himself, learning how to work, maybe learning how to being prepared to go out into the public and be useful for himself and whoever else.
And maybe being homeschooled, that'll probably be outlawed next.
Oh, I hope so.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for the call.
There's an interesting quandary that anybody who supports the state has to square, and that call brings it to mind. So, for the state to be legitimate, right? The whole premise is that there's private property and public property, and then the state says, well, you can have your private property and we'll have our public property. But in fact, under the state, neither one exists. Private property can't exist if the state has the authority to regulate you on your own property, right? That would make it public property. But public property can't exist if you don't have a right to do whatever you want on public property, like this homeless guy getting kicked off the street. If it's public property, anybody in the public should be able to do what they want on it.
Who is the public? You have to ask yourself. This is a question that I've never been able to get, because it doesn't exist. Who is the state? When you get arrested for a state crime, and coming soon to a theater near you, thought crime.
Thought crime, yeah.
Did we even touch on?
We haven't touched on that, but we'll get to the thought crime.
You get hauled in front of a judge, and you get charged with violating the state. Who is the state? It can't be the governor because he's in and out of there. We get a new one all the time, and the state still exists. It can't be the representatives because they're in and out of there. We vote in new ones, and it still exists. Who is the state?
Maybe it's the bureaucrats.
Who are you violating?
Once you get hired, you can never get fired.
So who is the public? Who owns that land?
Yeah.
If you go over there to the borough building and say, well, this is borough property. Who's the borough? Show me someone that, say you go break a window over there. They'll haul you in there and go, they violated the borough. Okay, well, show me the injured party. Who owns this building? Which is why that's the biggest problem with statutory laws and crimes against the state is there is no injured party. You can never, we have the right to be brought up in front of the person accusing you to.
Yeah, the accused can face the accuser.
You bumped my deal. I can't.
Hang on.
Hey,
we have a tragedy, the Commons problem in the studio. Are you good?
No.
Okay.
Okay, you're talking about the common property of the headphones, and because it belongs to everyone, it belongs to no one, and therefore nobody takes care of it, and nobody fixes it.
But you have the right to face your accuser, and there is no person that accuses you. You have a prosecutor. You say, well, what did I do to you? Well, you violated the state. Who is the state? I think if people will think about that, roll that in your mind, and decide who or what is the state. That's a question that needs to be answered sometime, because everything that we get hauled into jail for, all these ordinances, all this stuff, is because you're violating who? You can't use this property because it's public because you're violating what? Who is the state?
You know, my favorite is like what Dave said earlier about how they can regulate you on your own private property. And anybody who lives within the city limits knows exactly what I'm talking about. You can't fire off fireworks. You can't shoot a firearm. In fact, you can't even apparently pee in your own property. You heard about that guy that got arrested for indecent exposure last week or 2 weeks ago?
Well, you
right here in Fairbanks, guy went outside and relieved himself on his own property and was arrested because somebody saw him and accused him of indecent exposure.
I'm going to go home and pee in my yard.
Well,
you're not supposed to. Doesn't mean you can't.
Right. You can do whatever you want.
But then
you can do whatever you're not, whether there's permission or not. Obedience is a choice.
That's what it all comes down to.
And if you disobey,
you obey the state or not.
And then if you do not disobey, or rather if you do not obey, you have to be prepared for the consequences. And that's where most people they bow down because they get intimidated.
Yeah.
Whether it's the threat of a fine or the threat of being hauled off to jail.
Because you violated who?
The state.
Yeah. And who is the state?
It is all of us. Well, it's the same kind of thing as the ownership of the oil here by the state. All of us. We all own it. Right?
Yeah, which means that none of us own it.
458 Talk is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
This is Randy.
Randy, what's on your mind this morning?
I just wanted to tell Dave I really appreciate you being on the Michael Duke show last Wednesday, and you had a lot of good, interesting facts to present. And also, one of your recommendations was to go to that YouTube featuring a guy named Mike Maloney, who was giving a conference and a speech in Russia to a big banking conference. And I went to that YouTube and looked at that. It was very interesting, particularly when he pulled out this 100 trillion unit note from Zimbabwe.
Yeah, that's always a fun visual.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. And that was an example of totally irresponsible management of money, of the money supply, and it makes me think of the analogy of pumping up one's tires. I pump up my tires. I read carefully what the rating is on the tire and pump it up to get maximum efficiency for my vehicle to go down the road. But if some guy like the Zimbabwe leader was to pump it up, he'd blow up the tire. And so even though my point is that granted, I pump up my tire, the air that I use comes out of thin air, but it's still useful. And as I mentioned to you before, I have no problem with the fiat money system, but the key is putting that right amount of air in the tire, not blowing it up like they do in Zimbabwe.
Yeah. Did you check out that presentation? I think you missed the underlying point. He spends at least half the time talking about debt-based money, which all fiat money is. And he shows very clearly with little motion color dollar bills how when you have a debt-based money, there will, from day one, be more debt than base money. And as the money supply increases, the debt increases more quickly because the interest on the debt compounds. And that is why all fiat currencies end like Zimbabwe, all of them without exception, because if you have money issued with debt from day one, there's always more debt than there is money to pay the debt back.
And it's stealing.
And so, well, yeah, I mean, even beyond, you could set the morals aside, because,
Well, I'm not talking about morally. I'm talking about
getting
stolen from.
The ethics. But logically, like just the mathematics of it, of a debt-based money system, it always will end in hyperinflation. And that was the point of that video. And he showed it. He has this nifty little animated thing, and he shows that. He shows there's more debt than there's base money, and if you pay off all the base money, all you're left with is debt. That's how all fiat currencies end.
Every single one throughout history. And that's something to keep in mind, too, is that unless we get back to a real money system actually using something like gold or silver made into coins, we are never going to get out of this financial mess.
Can't happen here, Steve. This is the United States of America.
But
God smiles on us.
It can't even be managed correctly. It can't be managed correctly.
Wait.
If someone tried to pay off the debt, if Congress tried to pay off the debt, they would run out of base money before they could do it.
Exactly.
So it's impossible. It is impossible to pay it off. You always have to accrue more debt with a fiat money system.
458-TALK is the number. You can also join us in the chat room at KFAR660.com. We are streaming live around the world. Consider us a rest stop there in the information superhighway. Just make sure, like all rest stops, you wash your hands.
Fox News is next on KFAR, Local Talk Radio. Fox News Radio, I'm Karen Riegel. The Associated Press is reporting a significant number of the 31 U.S. troops killed in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan were part of the Navy SEAL unit that took out Osama bin Laden, although none participated in that raid. The Taliban, meantime, claiming responsibility.
This is only adding to the sort of darkening mood here about the lack of progress being made here in the war, calling into real serious questions about how much progress is being made.
Fox's Connor Powell reporting from Afghanistan. The president says his thoughts are with the families of those killed. The White House says Standard & Poor's used bad math when it lowered the U.S. credit rating from AAA to AA+. Standard & Poor's disagrees.
The negative outlook speaks to a 6 to 24-month time frame. You could go down more.
John Chambers with Standard & Poor's says the nation's debt is unsustainable. This is the first time the nation's credit rating has ever been lowered. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Local Talk Radio, KFAR, with a clear perspective on what's going on in the world, whether it's overseas or down your street. Tune in for the latest developments anytime, day or night. 660 AM, KFAR.
And you've got it on Local Talk Radio. We are 660 on your AM dial. And you are listening to Patriot's Lament, which is brought to you in part by Bighorn Enterprises. For all of your trucking and construction needs, call 451-7310.
If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. Samuel Adams.
The time is near at hand, which must determine whether Americans are to be free men or slaves. George Washington.
And what country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that this people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Thomas Jefferson.
Posterity, you will never know how much it cost the present generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make good use of it. If you do not, I shall repent in heaven that ever I took half the pains to preserve it. John Adams.
I sincerely believe that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, and that principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale. Thomas Jefferson.
Government is instituted to protect property, this being the end of government. That alone is a just government, which impartially secures to every man whatever is his own. That is not a just government, nor is property secure under it, where arbitrary restrictions, exceptions, and monopolies deny to part of its citizens that free use of their own faculties. James Madison.
It would be an absurdity for jurors to be required to accept the judge's view of the law against their own opinion, judgment, and conscience. John Adams.
Whenever the legislators endeavored to take away and destroy the property of the people, or to reduce them to slavery under arbitrary power, they put themselves into a state of war with the people, who are thereupon absolved from any further obedience, and are left to the common refuge which God hath provided for all men against force and violence. John Locke.
It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war has actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here, idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but for me, give me liberty, or give me death. Patrick Henry.
My people perish for the lack of knowledge. God.
Whether it's close to home or halfway around the world.
I want to be clear. The United States of America has done what we said we would do.
Breaking news and stimulating talk. AM 660, KFAR.